So this was what you would be seeing during the 1940s, right?
Yeah.
Keep calm and carry on. Now, tell me, give me a little bit of your background, Gwen. Where was hometown for you?
West London.
West London? And what did your mom and dad do?
My father was a surveyor and estate agent with his own business called Heron and Heron in Victoria Street.
Mm-hmm.
And my mother had her own business, which was fashions, right behind where Selfridges is now.
Mm-hmm.
And the name of her business was Wiggly Smith. And she did high-end fashions for mayoresses and people like that. And we were four girls and a boy. And I went to Haberdasher's School, which is a charitable. My father was the liveryman of the Haberdashers' Company. That's one of the London guilds,
mm-hmm.
of which there are 100.
Mm-hmm.
What else? I got up to school. I had to walk to school.
Right.
About 3 miles, my sister took me. And then she hated it because she had to come and get me. And then I got a bicycle which had an oil lamp. And if I didn't remember to put the oil in the lamp, I had to walk beside because it got dark at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, you know.
Sure.
And let's see what else. Very simple childhood, you know. A doll and a doll's pram and amusing myself.
Yeah.
Didn't have any of those care things like you have today for children. And then went to secretarial school. First of all, went to art school for a year, and went to secretarial college in London.
Mm-hmm.
And then one day I was in town in the ladies' part of the pub in Oxford Street, I think it was, with my mother, and I said, you know, I better start getting a job. And so I went into the employment agency and I said, have you got any jobs overseas? Because I'm tired of being stuck in England, you know. Oh, no, she says. So when I got back, the phone rang, said, you interested in going to Germany? And I said, whoa, I didn't know about that. She said, well, British War Crimes Commission is looking for secretarial types. My mother says, go, you know. She's so sweet. Go, girl. So I went out. My sister was working for Oliver Roskill, who had his own business in London, and he said, oh, you'll never make it over there. It's all ruins and so on. And so she says, no, I'm not coming with you. I said, you're going to be Miss Heron for the rest of your life, you know, and you'll... Oh, she said, I'd have to give him 6 months' notice. I said, no, come on, let's go. So anyway, we signed the papers. And then we got a call about a week later saying they were going to pick us up. And so they came about 10 o'clock at night. It was a soldier with one of those carrier things. Mm-hmm. Took us down to what is now Heathrow, which had a pot-bellied stove and it was a freezing cold night. Took us down there, and then they decided there weren't going to be any flights, so they brought us back home again. And this happened the following night, mm-hmm. Same deal. And so then we got a captain who came to meet us at Victoria Street and accompanied us across the channel. And we went across and then on a train to Paris. And they put us in this gorgeous hotel, you know, with sort of red velvet curtains. Mm-hmm. And we had a suite to ourselves with a bathroom, which was very strange because it looked like it had 2 toilets in it and one of them wasn't. And then he came and picked us up the next morning. We got on a train from Paris to Frankfurt. Mm-hmm. And I can remember to this day the horror I saw with all the glass cupolas, you know, were all gone and the whole place. I mean, I wanted to go and wash my hands, so the GI met us. He said, "Oh, you see that pile of bricks over there? Well, there's a doorknob. And go around behind the pile of bricks." So then we went off, got back in the car, and it drove us from Frankfurt to Nuremberg, to the Grand Hotel, opposite, and we were put in the 3rd or 4th floor, I think. And we had to walk on a narrow board to get to our room. I expect you've heard of that. And we had a nail on the back of the door to put our clothes. We had 2 GI beds, and if you were going anywhere, you had to sort of take off all the clothes that you had wore last week, you know, and reach for the... Anyway, then we went into the, picked up and taken to the courthouse, and then they distributed us into the big pool, you know, where everybody goes before they start. And I'm not afraid of saying it, we were top notch.
Yeah.
We were almost 90 words a minute. And these weren't electric typewriters in those days, you know. And there was a GI in charge, and Joan and I got all the work because we were churning it out. You know, we churned out the manuscripts.
Now, who was Joan?
My sister, Joan.
Oh, okay.
Joan Heron, yes. My maiden name was Heron.
Okay.
Heron. And let me see, where was I? Oh, and then they started to realize that they needed us in a better place, you know. So then we got assigned to the, Joan was assigned to Dr. Russell, Doc Russell, who, I forget what his administrative title was. He was, you've heard of Dr. Russell.
I have, yeah.
And she was extremely efficient, my sister. And I went to, I think, Arnost Horlick Hockwald, who was an immigrant, got out of Yugoslavia, I think, or one of those. He's a sweetie, really was awfully nice. And then I got onto those cases. The medical case was one, and what else did I work on? There's a whole list of them in the book. I can't remember them all. Medical case was extremely interesting, with all the experiments, you know. And one day my sister and I were told to go over to the Bahnhof and meet 2 ladies off the train who had been incarcerated in a concentration camp. And they got off the train, and one of them, she only had 1 bone in her lower leg. The other one had been destroyed. They had put shavings or something in the leg, and they were doing a test, I think, for sulfur drugs. Something like that. So she, as far as I can remember, she was on crutches. They were coming in as witnesses.
Right.
And there's some other, let me see, do you want to turn that off? Because there were chances to go into the courtroom. We had to get a pass to go in and sit in the gallery.
Just, you may have mentioned it, but let me just give my time frame. When did you come to Nuremberg? What was the time period you first got?
October 1945.
Okay. So you got into Nuremberg just before the first trial got started.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, they'd finished doing the hammering and all the, you know, emergency stuff and setting it all up. That's right. So that was 45. And do you want me to go through? I was there 4 years.
Yeah, this is fascinating. It's got all. Let me just pause for a second. When you first get to Nuremberg, the train comes in. You walk off the train and you look around. What's your impression of the city?
Oh, I mean, it's just, I'd seen London, but this was nothing compared to what that was, because it was, the buildings were made of different stuff, you know, from the Middle Ages, and they sort of crumbled. And then, of course, we heard the story that the Hitler Youth had surrendered. I don't know how true this was. They had white flags and stuff. But the Hitler Youth kept on fighting. So that's why it got so more destroyed, I believe, than it need have been. And, the guys weren't supposed to, what was the word, communicate with the German girls, but they did.
Little fraternization.
That's the word, frat. And but they did, and the opera house was more or less across the road from the hotel, and we could go there and have a nice concert and sit up in the gallery. It didn't cost you anything. And a couple of things happened there which I won't mention. Throwing balloons over from the gallery filled with water, but they weren't balloons.
I assume. I'm with you.
Things like that we used to laugh at. We were broad-minded. And then my sister was in India. She'd been a long time in India. That's another story. And her fiancé was taken prisoner in the Japanese from Singapore. She had to get out of Singapore, so he was killed in a prisoner of war camp by the Japs. So she had nothing to stay for. Long story short, she came back to England and found that we'd gone. So she tried her best to try and get over and couldn't. So she went to the PX office and got a job in Munich. She used to come up on the train and stay with us, you know. So that made 3 sisters.
Yeah.
And let me see, where was I?
Well, just a couple questions.
Prompt me a bit.
I'll prompt you, sure, I'll be happy to. So here you are in October of 1945. You're assigned to the British War Crimes Unit, headed by Harley Shawcross and David Maxwell Fyfe. Did you ever see the prosecutors themselves, the British prosecutors? Did your work interface with them?
Yes, we used to go up to that castle. What was the name of the castle?
Farber?
Yes.
Yeah.
We used to go up there for parties, and I remember one evening we sat around with, I think it was David Maxwell Fyfe, and he went in the kitchen and made some sandwiches, and sat around there. And then, let me see, the day after I got there, a couple of days after I got there, it was dark when we were coming home from work on the bus, and my sister went and sat on somebody's lap and said, "Oops, sorry." And it was Drexel Sprecher.
I'll be darned.
I'm sure you heard of Drex.
Oh, absolutely.
It's me, I all the time.
Yeah.
In fact, I was looking at his books yesterday. Yeah. Anyway, so he, being one of those very friendly people, he said, "Well, come and have a drink." So Joan said, "Oh, my sister." He said, "Well, bring her along." So we went into the bar. The first thing I saw on the menu was a drink entitled the Niebergall. And I thought, somebody's... And then came this loud voice, you know. And I thought, who the heck are you? And I was probably covering up his shyness, but he found out who Fred Niebergall was, you know.
So that's how you first laid eyes on him?
That's how I laid eyes on him, yes. and so, anyway, we worked up a friendship, you know. We went, they lived in a house with four guys in one of the Strasses, can't remember the name of it. And we moved out of the hotel into a house with 6 British girls, 4 besides us. And we used to visit back and forth, and of course, you know, the drinking we had, fun. And Fred and I sort of got together. And so, let me see. One day he left his 201 file in my room.
Well, what's a 201 file?
That's the background of every soldier. It's,
okay.
way back to the beginning, you know, who their allotments are to and so on. And I looked through the thing, I thought, we're not going to publish this.
No.
Allotment to Francis Niebergall, and I thought, good Lord, that must be his cousin, or of course. So I tackled him, turned off all the lights, and he started tearing a bit, and he said, I didn't want to tell you because I thought I'd lose you. And I said, you've already lost me. I'm not interested in dating a married man, you know.
Yeah.
So anyway, he, a couple of years later, or a year later, he managed to get assigned to a course over here in Washington on weapons, some weapons thing he did. And while he was there, he went to Kentucky and filed for divorce. And then my mother and father came over and took him in the backyard, so to speak, you know. What are your intentions? And anyway, we got married on the 20th of September 1947. Now, he was chief of the document division. He was in charge. He was incredibly talented and efficient. He was German by birth. In Hanau, was born in Hanau, next to Frankfurt. And he came over here when he was 17. As a mechanical engineer, he took engineering in grammar school or whatever. And he started from the very bottom, not knowing a word of English. But I'm digressing, aren't I?
That's very fascinating. No, that's great. They'll all tie together.
He came over here, yes, he was 17. He went to Chicago because he had a school friend who was over here. And who'd urged him to come, thank God, otherwise he'd probably been dead because he was 6'2", you know, the sort of Aryan race, you know, they liked. So he did night school in Chicago, learned English. He determined he was going to learn. You'd never know he was, unless he had a few drinks.
Right.
And then he couldn't say valve, he'd say valve, you know. And he always added up the column of figures in German. And so you know, he couldn't do that. But he would never have known. And oh, he was a charming fellow. And he sold cheese from door to door. He was in the, what do you call that? That big Irish village, you know, when they had that big exhibition. And he was Mr. O'Reilly or something in charge of the, what's that thing in Ireland where this Blarney Stone.
Right.
They had that. And he did all kinds of jobs, you know, for $1 an hour, all over the place. And then he finally ended up in the Cincinnati Milling Machine Company making tools. And somehow, then he enlisted. Because you were an alien, you had to do your duty. So he enlisted as a private, went down to Camp Shelby, is that Mississippi or something, and worked his way up to sergeant. And then he went to officer candidate school and got a second lieutenant. And then they, somehow or other, they found out that he was a native speaker, German they needed, so he got seconded over to Paris, and from Paris to Nuremberg. That's how he got. And he became a first lieutenant. And let me see. And then there was a time in the 1950s when they could switch from the Army to Air Force, so he switched his commission to the Air Force. And stayed in the reserve and retired as a full colonel. That's quite a story for somebody. So that's that side of it. And I had a wonderful, it was the best years of my life. Then I had a child, Robert, in, oh, I know. So when we went back to the States at the end of his tour in Nuremberg, we went back to the States, and then he got a job back in Germany with the Air Force. And so I took an opportunity and went back to England to visit my mother with the baby, having come over on the ship, and I was almost ready about to give birth, and I think the flight was cancelled or something like that. And they told him that I would be overflying Munich and going on to Turkey, and I was about 9 months pregnant. So anyway, that worked out all right. I was over in Munich about 2 days, and then I had Robert, who is he comes down once a month from New Jersey.
That's nice.
And 6'2", gorgeous, does everything for me. So then, we got transferred to, we never went back to Nuremberg. We got transferred to Rhine-Main. Near Frankfurt, had a lovely house there. Kids went to school. And Wiesbaden, we spent 10 years in Wiesbaden. Went to the Opera House, and we had a nice old house, there was a woman who was a former Nazi living upstairs. It was a huge house with a winding stairs. And we had the bottom floor, and the hall was so big they could ride their bicycles all around it.
Wow.
And they used to go to the top of the stairs and then get in a box and bumpity-bump down there. It was such a big place. I went to the PX and I bought some material for $1 a yard, and I made all the slip covers because we were living on the economy, so we couldn't get American furniture. So we got all the cast-offs, I had to cover up, the stuffing was coming out of them, and so I made all these covers. It was a good time. And then I became president of the Women's Club in Wiesbaden, and we did a lot of fundraising with the Women's Club, and with the help of my friend who now lives in Williamsburg, Maureen, we ran what they call it, I've forgotten the German word, but the thing is you have to go to each store and ask them for a donation,
Right.
And then it all goes out on the table, and all the Americans come on a Saturday night and they bid.
Chinese auction type thing.
Ah, yes, that's the sort of. So she and I ran this, which we gave to the local people, So I wasn't sort of sitting on my thumb.
Yeah.
And then that came to an end, and we had to come back here. And he had a hell of a job getting a job here by remote control, because he'd put in his applications, and they said he'd been out of the country too long.
Yeah.
He had to be re-indoctrinated type thing. It just broke my thought. Here's a man who's so talented,
Right, sure.
and had such an experience, such experiences. So he finally got a job over here at Belvoir. And we stayed with Drexel Sprecher until we found a house, and I found this house wasn't even built yet. You know, I'd come home and say it's 4 bedrooms and 2 floors. I couldn't remember which house Finally, I decided on this one, and we stayed in a motel over by. Well, that doesn't say material. We stayed in a motel, and it was boiling hot in August, and I had 3 kids.
Aye.
And no car, because when the car came, it wouldn't pass inspection. Mm-hmm. It was an Opel. It wouldn't pass inspection because the windshield wasn't the right kind of glass.
I'll be there.
So, we sat there in this motel trying to amuse 3 kids all day in the heat. Then finally Drex said, come on and stay with us. So we stayed with Drex for 6 weeks. And then we moved into this house, and they went to school round the corner.
Sounds like you had a long relationship with Drexel, literally from day one.
Oh, he was a roommate, you see.
Yeah.
And Drex was writing this book then. I'm skipping a lot. Yeah. But Fred hated this job at Belvoir. Yeah. He wasn't kept busy. He wasn't being used. It was in intelligence. I forgot to tell you, he was in intelligence. Mm-hmm. And with excellent, I mean, his quality of work in Germany, he used to go up to the border, and it was all, because a lot of times, and the phone used to ring, and then I'd pick up the phone, there'd be nobody there. Ah. Or he'd leave the house midnight, and I think, oh, maybe he's having an affair, He couldn't tell me where he was going. Right. And once I befriended a German lady, and she invited me to go to an opening of some movie in Berlin. It was just on the border of East Berlin. Oh, I forgot to tell you, we lived in Berlin for, 3 years, I think. Mm-hmm. Berlin. And she invited me to this opening with people all dressed up and going to this opening. And when we left, she said, "Oh, Gwendolyn, there's a taxi over there." And I said, that was across the other side of the street, which is the German side. Right. And I thought, I don't think so. I can't afford to. My husband's in intelligence, I was thinking, I don't want them to kidnap me. Right. So I said, no, I think I'll go over there. Little things like that made me nervous, I used to pull the shutters down because I thought somebody might put a ladder against the window and kidnap my son. No, that's a good one. But we were taking Russian lessons from this white Russian. And he used to come to the house, and one day when he was giving Fred a lesson, I looked in his suitcase and there was a gun in it. I'll be darned. He always carried this gun, apparently. Anyway, I shut the suitcase before he came into the room. But he never, when Fred took him home, he never would let him go to he always asked to be dropped off at the corner. Yeah. Sort of mysterious, Anyway, so, let's see, what else can I tell you? Oh, so anyway, I went to work.
Now, you were back to, I'm just going to kind of start back a little bit, at Nuremberg, as you were with the British. How long did you stay with the British after the were you there until the trial?
We did, yes. I think we stayed with that complex. Right. I think. Oh, there's a bird there. Yeah, and then the Americans couldn't get us fast enough. Right. Because we had a lot of German girls working there. Right. And as I say, we were pretty hot stuff. Yeah. In terms of work, we never I mean, we'd work until the manuscripts came. That was before I got assigned to the different lawyers. I'm trying to remember all their names now.
These are the British lawyers?
No, they were American. I worked for 3 or 4 or 5. Alexander Hardy.
Yes. Mm-hmm. This would have been the subsequent trials, right?
Benny Ferencz, yeah.
Benny Ferencz, yeah. He's still alive.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a couple of books signed by him.
Mm-hmm.
We had reunions, you know, after we came back here, and I helped organize the first reunion. I got all the papers of all the people who bought all the tickets. I've kept all that.
Good for you.
And let me see. Oh, there's so much. I met a couple of the, not personally, but just who are the journalists, that grumpy one that came to our reunion.
Andy Rooney?
No, he wasn't grumpy. It was that other one, and tall. Where's my ticket, sort of thing. Anyway, I thought, oh, is that what you're like? Interesting. Who else did I meet? I met, we went up to the castle, as I said, and Fred and I had a fight, and I threw this ring into the fountain.
Oh, did you? Yeah,
Oh, we had the ring by then, and
yeah, the
I said,
ring.
you could. And I threw it into the fountain, and so he rolled up his pants legs and climbed into the fountain. Let's see, the trials. This is a book. My husband was chief of documents, and they decided.
What was that role? What did he do?
He ran about, I don't know. I've got it down somewhere. It's about 100 Germans and 6 or 7 or 10 Americans, and he produced the daily proceedings by 8 o'clock the next morning.
How would it work with the, let's just say the Americans wanted to, they're putting on evidence, would they make an application to Fred and say, we'd like the following documents prepared?
Yes, they were numbered by PS, and that was Paris Story, PS for short. They sat down when they first got there and decided how they were going to do it. Have you looked at Drex's book at all?
I have. I've read the book, right, yeah. And I see the PS.
Yeah. And they had mimeograph machines. You remember those?
Yeah.
I don't suppose you do.
Why, yes, I do.
Oh, God. And they worked all night, and we worked pretty much till midnight, you know, churning out the stuff, because it had to be on the judge's desk by the morning so they knew how to proceed. And that was Fred's, that was a huge, huge job. And he performed magnificently.
And he would attest to the authenticity, so that was part of the...
Yes, I have that authenticity on the internet. It's on the computer. I, Fred Niebergall, Lieutenant 01160, hereby certify that. And that's all over the computer. You can get that anywhere.
Right.
And then when, of course, when it all closed up, he had the job of putting it all into the footlockers, getting it ready for shipment, and then that all came over to the archives here in Washington, D.C. And I think then they got the know-how to, what do you call it?
Digitize them.
Yeah, or something.
Yeah.
So that they're all packed, you know, they're all... Anyway, that's what, they're not still in boxes, I suppose.
No,
They're
no.
probably all put on tape stuff for it. And Drex gave us one of the print-ups of one of the trials, and we went over to, was that University? George Mason?
George Mason.
We went over there and we made a presentation of it to their law library.
Isn't that nice?
And then we took it off our taxes, $250. And let me see, can you, yeah, this was, he had to be able to identify all the signatures of the documents, so he had this book, which he copied, tried to imitate the signatures. That's his, we kept that on his desk.
Oh. Were those the actual signatures?
No, I think he used a carbon copy.
Wow, isn't this interesting?
That's a bit. This was Mount Niebergall marks remains of Third Reich. That was our paper that we had for the.
What did Fred think of the trial itself as he was working on authenticating documents and presenting them to be put as into evidence? What was his reaction to the whole thing? He was talking to you and said, this is it going well? Is the trial going well? Did he get a reaction?
You mean from the efficiency point of view, or
Well,
from
or just
being
the prosecution
being a German-born American?
Yeah.
Working to bring those people to justice.
Yeah. What was his perspective?
I don't think he ever really he left all that German stuff behind, in his youth.
Right.
Of being a German. He dropped that. But he couldn't really take it out of his system. He used to. What did he think of it? The way it was run, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
The way it was. I think he thought they did a good job. They did the best they could. Some of the judges he thought shouldn't have been there, I don't think.
Because he was the chief of the documentation during the Jackson trial.
All the way through.
All the way through.
Start to finish.
And then was he?
There he is.
Right here.
And he presented Drex's documents.
Okay, so that's it. Okay. Oh, terrific. And then you guys stayed right for the other 12 trials too.
Yeah.
What was his role in that? Was he also documentation?
Say the same thing. Yes. He was. Nobody else could have done it.
Yeah.
I mean, we wanted to stay, of course, but he didn't have to be talked into it.
Did he go to Did you go to a lot of the trial itself? Did you go?
Yeah. Whenever I could get out, I'd get a pass and go in.
What did you think? You walked in that first day, and there's Goering and Hess.
It was like a dream.
Yeah.
I couldn't believe it. I could almost reach out and touch him, I felt, And I used to watch Goering. Every time a woman passed by, or the court reporter or something, he'd look her up and down, Real ladies' man.
Yeah.
Fat tick he was.
Did you have a reaction as you looked down the dock and you saw Stryker? Or
They looked like nothing. Just like somebody you'd see on the street, without all their flashy uniforms and all that. They looked like just, I can't say a labourer, but I think you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
You would never have, you could never conceive that they would get themselves involved in such heinous activities.
Right.
Amazing how people can get drawn in, I think. I've always wondered how they could get drawn into this whole scheme of things, because I watch that military channel a lot nowadays, and it strikes me that it's not difficult to get caught up in some kind of a organization, get sucked into it, until that some people can get. That's what worries me about what we've got now,
Exactly.
So, this is that's the I, Fred Niebergall. I suppose you've seen that.
Oh, yeah.
That's Joan and me when we first started.
Oh, terrific.
Oh, then they made me the boss of the whole. I had 30 women. To take care of all what they produced every day,
What was your impression? You're there working. Did you get a sense that this was just a job, or were you part of history? Did you really get a sense of that?
I thought, I had no, it wasn't just a job. It wasn't just a job. It was the best experience of my life. I met some super people. I thought it was justice had been done. I thought it was something that was very well, considering it was kind of put together, on a shoestring, really. In Paris, I think they all got together in Paris, and it just. No, I thought it was. Have you met anybody who thought it was unfair, unjust? Or?
No.
Now these are the court reporters up there behind the screen. You've probably seen that one.
Great picture.
Pete Uberall, you didn't see him, did you? He
I did.
died last year.
I talked to him on the phone, but he died just when we were.
Yeah, I went to see him. He just lived just down the road.
Yeah.
That's me. Drex's remarks on the top. That was when I first.
So there you are. I have that book, Leo Kimes. I didn't know that. Now that I see you there, how about that? Did your paths ever cross with Jackson's at all? Did you ever see him?
Yeah, I think once at the castle,
Right.
Faber Castle. Now, Drex was from, his relatives were from the Faber family. Did you know that?
I didn't know that.
Yeah. But, I mean,
He's quite a ladies' man, wasn't Drex? He's pretty.
Oh, yeah, he took a fancy to my sister for quite some time. And he's always, every time he wrote to me, give my love to your sister, and right up until just before his death. He always had my sister lived in Albuquerque. She said, get lost. Why don't you just, he married Virginia. He was, I'm sorry, Drex, but he was a real social climber,
Mm-hmm.
And if you read his book, every page is I this, I that, and he wrote to me and he said, Gwen, you're going to have to buy my book. So I thought, for my son's sake, I'll fork out whatever it was. And I've mentioned Fred at least 6 times. I've been through that book. I can't find, there's one mention of my husband without any rank saying, Fred Niebergall came into my bedroom one morning and told me that, who was it, that striker, was it one of them who hanged himself?
Robert Lay.
Yeah, he tied his pajama cord to a door handle or something. And we all laughed. And that's the only mention I can find of his. I wish to hell I could get my money back, because he said, you must buy the book because the boys, it's their father and so on. And I've hunted through that book. You say you've read it.
I have.
You haven't seen Niebergall anywhere, have you?
Just once.
Once.
Yeah.
And without him they couldn't have functioned.
That's right.
Okay, resolution of a permanent international criminal court. Well, that came afterwards, 1996. You've had that, I suppose.
Right.
Adolf Hitler's personal photographer took this. Oh, yeah. What else have I got?
Well, you've got some...
Yeah, these are my passes. Just... Yeah. 1, 2, 3. I had to show that every time we went in. Now, Bob Cooper. Oh, that's what my father was doing during the war. This wonderful business he had, well known all over London. That all went out of the window, of course. So he joined I forget what we call it, I can't see, but he joined that for $12 a week.
I'll be there. Civil Defense Region, yep.
$12 a week, this man was. But you're very interested in Nuremberg. I mean, no, you don't want to go before that, when we got our windows knocked out by a bus bomb and all that.
Well, maybe we might do that too. After the international military, the Jackson trial, then you stayed around, and what was your role during the subsequent trials? Did you stay? Because the British certainly...
Oh, the British gave us over quite early,
right,
off their payroll.
Right.
We went on to the American payroll.
And then you work with various American lawyers.
Yes. I'm trying to think of all that. As I said, Andy Hardy,
And Ben Fry.
McHaney.
McKinney, sure.
They thought we were top notch.
Yeah. Henry King, was that part of your world? That ring a bell? Henry King?
No, I heard of him. No.
Yeah.
But I don't think I ever met him.
Right.
Then Dr. Russell's brought over his friend Virginia, and Trex took a liking to her, so they got married.
Right.
I think he thought she was a rich woman.
Mm-hmm.
Wrong. Let's see. Well, this is a picture of a cold water experiment. You've probably seen one of those.
Oh, yeah, man, it's unbelievable.
And they used that experiment in the medical trial. They referred to it in the medical trial. They wanted to see when the downflyers, how long they could last in cold water without, on whether warming them up between two gypsies or wrapping them up in blankets, which was the quickest way to bring them back to. I forget what they came up with. These are. My youngest son's father-in-law is fascinated by this whole thing.
Yeah, yeah.
And he's a lawyer, Schaefer. And every time we meet, about twice a year, he says, I want to see those photos. And he sends an email. He says, I said, well, shall I put them in a box and send them to? He says, no, I'll come down and get them. And so the other day, it was at Christmas, I think, we got together. And he said, what about those photographs? And I said, Dad, what are you going to do with these? Oh, well, my pals and I'll, you know, I've got one behind my desk, he says. I've blown it up. One you gave me, it's about this big. I forget which one I gave. But I got a funny feeling. So I said to him, you can't reproduce these, you know. Because I said it says it's copyright.
Right.
Now he stopped asking me, so.
So I think the copyright is long since gone. It's 26 years.
And this was, Bob Cooper was a journalist with Daily Mail or something, I forget which. And we met him at a dance. They were dancing in the ballroom, you know, the Grand Hotel. And so he wrote this book and gave it to me. And I foolishly lent it to Drex, who was writing a book. And he had this book for probably 5 or 6 whole years.
Right.
Finally, I said, I'd like my book back. I finally got it. Well, I was absolutely floored. I think he plagiarized it. I mean, you know what he did to my book?
Oh, all those notes, yeah. My gosh.
That's what I got back. SOB.
You'll be there. Yeah, I think you're probably right.
That, you know, kind of. I'm very fond of Drex, but it's.
He was your best man, wasn't he?
Yes, he was. Oh, I didn't give you the pictures of the. Did I give you those pictures? No, I can't walk away, can I?
Oh, here, I can. Have you ever written anything? Have you ever done anything? As far as your Nuremberg experiences, have you ever sat down and written that stuff?
No, I wouldn't know who to send it to or who'd be interested. Oh, these are what Fred had for. Oh. Miss Telford, Taylor.
Yes. Yeah.
You know who that is?
There's our guy.
You know this one?
Sure, that's Kempner. Robert Kempner.
Fred and he were very friendly.
Because did they speak German a lot to each other when they were?
Oh, I don't know if they did. I don't think I was ever there. Not in front of anybody, but they might have done in the office.
I'm just curious because both being German.
Fred was always. No, they spoke American.
Yeah.
But Fred was. He'd get on with the policeman, you know. In Wiesbaden, they sent him a great big picture with you know, he was friendly to all the workers. Well, you've got that at the entrance.
Right. We've seen that. That's a great book, or a great picture group.
Anything? I don't know if there's anything in there that.
We've seen that particular one because it's a great grouping.
These are more. Now you see some of these things. There he is. That's Fred.
Oh,
He
nice.
came back to the States the first time, went to Cincinnati, I joined the festival chorus because I like to sing. And then I took a temporary job with Senator Taft
What time?
in Cincinnati. And it upset me because I found out that he was Robert Taft. I used to have to take it was a bus that went every hour. Imagine coming from a place like Germany where there are buses, all over the place. And I get out to Cincinnati in the outback, and it takes me an hour to get into work every morning on the bus, staying with friends of Fred's, German. I came home one day and the whole kitchen was underwater, and so I asked her about it, and she said, well, I've just had the refrigerator fixed and you had it up too high or something. And I said, you're not supposed to come into my place. So from then on she locked me out. I mean, she wouldn't let me use the phone or anything. I couldn't wait. We left in the middle of the night with 2 dogs. Crept out of the front and went to, by that time he'd found a job. Walter Rapp, do you ever hear of Walter Rapp?
I have.
They were buddies, Fred and Walter Rapp. And he wrote to Walter and he said, you've got to get me out of here.
Yeah.
Well, this is kind of another thing. Fred went back to the Cincinnati Milling Machine because they have to give you the job back when you come home,
Right.
you know. So he was working, from doing what he'd been doing, he went back to getting his hands dirty, hardening tank, what do you call them? You know, the things that go around the track.
Right.
Metal hardening machine. And they were going to go somewhere and install this thing with his 2 other guys. And we had orders to be in New York, Maguire, to go back to Germany. Walter had got Fred this other job. And that machine that he was supposed to work on blew up.
Yeah.
And they were killed. Isn't it weird how nature... Coincidence. He would have been dead if he had not had that order to go to Maguire.
Gosh.
Weird.
What's your reflection on Nuremberg? I mean, we talked a little bit about Fred's. Did you get a
You
sense-
mean business-wise or personal?
Personal. When the day is done, you've been there from 1945 to 1949.
49.
You know, and you sit back today, and here we are, 2010. What did that mean to you?
It was a great experience of my life. Of course, it turned my life into a completely different direction, you know. I never thought of going to America. Didn't occur to me. The whole new kind of... It was hard on me. When I look back, I often think to myself, you know, I gave up a lot to come here. I didn't know what I was in for. You know. Then I went to work, I think I told you, after we came back for keeps. And we need the money. And besides, what would I do? The kids are in school. We had nothing. We had no furniture. We sat on the fireplace in there with our backs against the wall. I had 3 little kids, 8, 6, and 2. We had nothing. So Fred went down to the nearest store and got a little black and white television. And then I took the kids out. I had no transport, as I said, so I walked all the way around here and down there, and it was August, looking for a school to enroll them in. And I never saw anybody. I've never seen such a place. There was nobody out there walking. Everybody drives. So I couldn't ask the way, you know. But you say, where's the school? There was nobody to ask. And then somebody said to me one day, you know, you are a fool, Gwen. You're in America now. Just take that scratch, take a razor blade and scratch that mark off your windshield.
Yeah.
and then take it in to be inspected. I thought, you can't do that. Well, I'll try it. I did it.
They're good for you.
3 months or 2 months I'd been without any transportation because I couldn't. So I had to give up an awful lot when I came here.
Did Fred talk much about Nuremberg? I mean, or was that 1949? You come back here, you start a new life. Did he ever reflect much on his experience at Nuremberg? Did he feel like he needed to write anything, or was it just part of his life that he moved on?
I think he moved on. Yes, I think he moved on. He couldn't. He was an American
Right.
in America, and I think he'd do Uncle Sam's work the best way he could, and stayed in intelligence, but he didn't really stay friends with anybody except Rex.
Right.
He never went and had a drink. Oh, maybe a couple of times somebody would call him up and say, "Hey, I'm in town," you know.
Yeah.
But that was all behind.
Because a lot of people did that. I mean, the Nuremberg folks' wife talked to, you know, it was just a part of their life. They didn't
That's right.
reflect much on it. Some didn't even think it was really historical at the time. Now, many, many years later, of course, it was. Did Fred get a sense of perspective of the history that he was through, or?
We never really talked about it. I think he thought that someday we may have to repeat the process, you know, somewhere else.
Yeah.
You know. But no, we never talked about it. Maybe he did. I think he just put it behind him. When he came back here, he got to start over, you know. He had 3 kids to support. I went to work for the engineers on Belvoir, Army Tactical Data Systems. And I sat there half of the day weaving a rug.
Terrific.
Oh, I haven't really
I thank you for giving me all
told you
this
anything new, have I, really?
Lots of new. This is a piece of the life which we didn't have a chance to talk. I haven't talked to anybody